The nose of your Vega is going to need 7 circuits: ground, headlight high beams, headlight low beams, left turn signal, right turn signal, running lights including the side markers, and your horn. A lot of connectors only have the option for 6 circuits, so you have to leave the horn with the frame. And horns usually use a relay, so you got low power, low current at your horn buttons inside the car, and then a relay closer to the horn. So I'm supposing you're going to have all your electrical under the dash somewhere hidden, so you don't have a bunch of foo bars under the or in the engine compartment, including horn relays and things like that. So the horn's going to have a higher current, bigger wire going out to it, if that's the case. So we'll simplify and just talk about the 6 circuits for now, possibly 7. Old school Amphenol is the obvious choice for things because it's you twist the barrel, it's a one-hand disconnect, it's quick, and it can come with a lot of different pin sizes for different size wirings for different circuits. Your headlights alone are 11 amps, and the other loads, you're eventually going to have to ground the nose somewhere. So you want a substantial ground, maybe a 12 or a 10. 10 would do up to 30 amps and do all of your lights. And your horn, which can be maybe 5 amps, 10 amps on a really big horn, or a pair of them. Amphenol has a bulkhead connection that can actually be just on the firewall, so you have just the cable that unplugs at the firewall, or of course inline connectors where you got the cable coming out of the firewall and the connector somewhere else. And the good thing about the Amphenols, you can have all your different color wires sheathed, and the sheath can be hidden within the connector, so you don't ever see the individual colored wires. There are thousands of possibilities, so the hardest thing is being able to spec what you need and the sizes and things like that. And there's a lot of different suppliers like Digi-key and Mouser, places like that. You can get anything you want. The old school Amphenols were all solder connections. It can be a chore. I've done them. It's best to start at the connector itself and work backwards, because you're going to mess up. You're going to have to shorten wires, and eventually you're going to make a fuck up and have to unsolder them. You just heat them up good, pull wire and flick out the solder, redo it. I've done that before. Biggest drawbacks of the Amphenol, it's got the ugly cable clamp on it. It's got your basic army green, which is a hard anodized, probably can be redone, but that's money. They're not too expensive, and they're a little bit of a bitch to assemble and solder and all that. It's World War II, old school. It's been done to death, but they're bulletproof. So Amphenol also has more modern and cheaper things. You got your Sine motion grade, which is kind of chrome plated, and Eco-Mate, eco for economy, so they're plasticky, black, different colors, and your A series, which is more modern, and it's got more signals and stuff, computer stuff, and just maybe more weatherproof and plasticky too, but for factory stuff. I know you don't like crimp stuff, but with the right pliers, Delphi makes a really nice 6 connector that can use different varieties of wiring sizes as well. It's weatherproof, it's modern. You've probably seen them on the later cars. The major drawbacks of these, it's a flat connector, so they got a 6-pin, but you see the wires coming out. No matter what you do, they're going to flare out at the end of your loom. You can't put them in a sheath and hide all that extra colors. The 6 connector ones are about $10 a piece. You could buy 3 of them with different wire size pins and fit them together as you need for $10 a piece. $30 you'd have your 6-wire connector. For $45 on eBay, I found a kit with a variety of sizes and pins. You could probably fit a whole bunch of other connections, fuel pump, things like that. And again, I know you don't like crimp stuff, but with the right pliers, you can make a nice crimp. And if you feel like you need to put some solder on it, tin the wire first and then just heat it up quick with a ball of solder on your iron so you get the heat transfer and it won't fill up the tube and screw up your connection. They also held in place in the housing with a barb, metal barbs out the side. And here's a tool, it's just a small tool that small tube that goes in around it and collapses the barb so you can pull the pin out if you screw up, have to disassemble. And there's a couple different companies that make about a $30 crimp type connector that makes a nice C crimp over your wire and also crimps onto the ceiling ferrule that goes inside and keeps the water out of it. Not like you have that in LA. In the same series, they're called Weather Pack. They also make this bulkhead if you needed to bring a whole bunch more wires out to your engine compartment. Kind of ugly. I don't know what you'd do with it, but you could start several different looms from your firewall, bring them out to the rest of the under hood stuff. Molex is another company that makes a huge variety of connectors. Most of them are 2 hands to get apart. I don't think they need a screwdriver. Usually you can pinch them with your fingers, but you a little bit of hold your mouth right to get them undone. Here's one I've used on a lot of different machines. These things use a screwdriver to connect your wires, and kind of a big foobar thing. You can get them in a bulkhead that mounts on the firewall. There's just 2 bails on it. Unflip them and you can unplug the whole thing. But they are kind of huge, being a screwdriver type thing, field wireable. They are weatherproof. You can hide the wires in a plastic or braided loom, or you can use like seal type, like the plastic hose for electrical, a whip that goes out to your air conditioning unit, like that. Again, no soldering, no crimp, just your wires go and a screwdriver fitting. They also have an inline version if you're just running a cable out of the firewall and you want it somewhere else. It's got a housing, and then the other side is the bail that flips open and it just comes right apart like that. Zip-Port is another company that makes the same kind of one-hand disconnect. It's got the bail and then the whole thing just flips off. Also foobarish. Again, there's screwdriver connection of the wires. They come in bulkhead type or in the middle of a cable in line. You might find some use for these elsewhere. These are also made by Zip-Port, and they don't carry the current in a 6 conductor. It's only up to like 8 amps or so, and they're definitely not for this application. They have 2, 3, 4. So for other applications in the car, back at the fuel pump or something like that, without crimping a bunch of shit, these are nice little disconnects too. Lacing is a lost art. It died the day after zip ties were invented, but it's how they used to do bundles of wires in the old days. It was a waxy lace, and they tied it all along the length of it. When you're building a bundle of wires, it's always best to leave one end free. You got 6 or 7 wires in the connector, and you comb through them with your fingers and start with one zip tie and tighten it up. Put the next one on next to that one and just snug it down so you can slide it on down the way, and it'll keep the wires in the same order as you go. And I don't know, about every 4 or 5 inches is pretty good usually. And probably best to do it in the car you know, because when you make bends, the inner wire is shorter than the outer wire, so you know, it'll screw up by the end of your run if you don't do it that way. Just go, you know, approximate, but it's always pretty. Here's one of my favorite tools in my electrical tool bag. It's made by Thomas and Betts, about 30 bucks, and it's got a blade on it, and it cinches down your zip ties as tight as you want them or as loose as you want them, and then with a twist, it severs the end without leaving that jagged little end that'll leave blood all over. Nice to have. You've probably done as much soldering as I have, but here's some tools you might not know about. One thing I didn't have pictured, it's a cutters that has one flat side, makes a nice crisp clean cut. They don't have to be very big. You can get one for about 10 bucks. Kester with a K is a good brand for solder and flux. Can of paste flux is good for when you're going to tin wire. You dip the wire ends into it and wicks the solder really well. And the little resin pen, the flux pen, also made by Kester. I use a number 186. It's like a magic marker with flux in it, so when you're doing little terminals and things, you can get the flux where you need it. Little helping hands vise is nice for putting terminals together, holds everything in place, the right tension. Klein, K-L-I-N-E, is the best electrical tools you can buy. If you're going to do any barrel crimps, if you ever do that kind of stuff, these don't just smash the barrel like the cheapy wire strippers. They put a nice little indent on it as well. You can get heat shrink crimps too that you seal up with a heat gun or a hair dryer and they keep the weather out. Hemostats are great to have around, good as a heat sink. They keep the solder from wicking too far up into your insulation, and it's good to do soldering stoned. And the rest of these tools are good for circuit board repair. I saved a lot of oven and dryer circuit boards. $300 control boards are ones that are obsolete. Usually they put a $5 relay in that burns up. You can go to Mouser or Digi-key and find a good $10 relay that's twice the current. And so you use the solder sucker, is good for cleaning up circuit boards. You get the solder hot and immediately put the sucker on it, hit the button, and the vacuum pulls the solder up into it, and you're free to take your component off your circuit board. And solder wick does the same thing. It just wicks up the, it's disposable. It just wicks up the solder as you're using the soldering iron on a circuit board and gets it out of the way. And anytime you're doing board repair or any kind of soldering, really, it's nice to clean off your iron with the paste flux, and you put a little ball of solder on it, because as soon as you touch it, you've got that all that surface area for heat transfer. It gets hot a lot quicker. And even when you're taking components off, you don't have a lot of surface area there. You only got a couple contact points of the soldering iron, and you can get the component lead and the solder pad on the circuit board hot at the same time if you start with a little excess solder and just suck it all out of the way when you get it hot. And for things out of the weather or out of sight, this is a nice little barrier strip. Screw down, probably takes up to number 12 wire, maybe even number 10. Screw down, you can cut it to length. It's nylon. It's durable and saves you a lot of stuff that doesn't have to be pretty, just tight and clean, no crimps. So last but not least, for obscure stuff, I like going to mouser.com, like the mouse, or Digi-key, Digi-key. Automation Direct has a lot of cool push buttons, switches, some multi-conductor connectors. A lot of good stuff like that. Pretty good quality, and price is right. Lowe's, you can get Klein tools, reasonably priced. And Allied Electronics is another place I go to for a lot of things. They just have a lot of toggle switches and terminals and just supplies, little things you need here and there. And please let me know if you find something cool I haven't seen yet. You've probably got different supplies than I do and a different way of looking at things. Take care, buddy.
Dad was right.